your host, the Ludist. Well, that was a little awkward, right? Well, welcome back. Today, we will be focusing on GIR, but not so much the puppy GIR. See, I did a few more sketches and messing around on my own time. We're going to focus on Robot GIR and dissect his character. As you see, there's two distinct styles, but they're similar in different ways. So that being said, I'm going to trace and just start rambling away at myself, right? So let's start with this front profile. Let's go ahead and put the opacity down on this guy. Boom, just like that. And make sure I'm not turning anything off. That would be awful, right? All right. So GIR, Robot GIR. This I would consider the innards of what we were talking about on our last episode, right? Like I would say that, I would go as far to say that this mechanical GIR is primarily the GIR that is hidden behind the inner child GIR. But this GIR is just as insane. But he still holds the protocol, so he's got this hard interior, you know. I'd like to say the metaphor is that not every hard interior has a soft and squishy exterior, or vice versa, but just based off of his dynamic in terms of range and how his character is built, we can tell that GIR is definitely pieced together. As in the series, they just kind of grabbed some scraps from the garbage bin and assumed he was going to be this awful robot, right? And sometimes I feel like I'm just from a garbage bin, you know? You never know. Some days you're feeling better than others, and other days you just want to ramble on, as I do here, right? Now, what I really like about this torso, it's got like this exterior, very simple design, right? This design here is pretty common for when you draw any other object, so to say, right? It's always like this shoulder line, and then something that mates them through. So you see this here on GIR, and normally you would get your pecs, right? And then kind of add your piece underneath. So this would be like your abdominal area. So you get your pec area and your abs. But GIR is very similar to this, but instead of having the pec area, he has them bulging out, right? So drop this pin size. So if we draw a regular torso, right? And we shorten the amount of torso, we could just go straight into drawing the abs. So it's almost like the shoulders start halfway up the half portion of the torso, right? And that's very unique to his character design. It really is immaculate, because now if you animate him, you have these pivot joints here, right? So if you were going to put an arm on this, let's say we have this crazy little arm, right? We would create, let me do it from out here. We'd create a radius as such, right? And then there would be a pivot point here. So if we enlarge this, let's say that's his arm, right? There's a circle up here that you would match this plus with that plus. And you would pin those together so you'd be able to have full rotation on this radius here, right? So a lot of times when they think about these concepts, they think about ease of animation, right? Now, one thing that I like about the legs is that these legs, they're easy to move around and maneuver. Oh, look at that. See how they're half circles? And if we wanted to, we can draw the full circle and how it eats into the body. And then he just has a decal circle in the back right here. That's amazing. I love that. All right, so I'm going to do this one without the hands. So let's scrabble these here. Now, if we were going to animate this, we have these little legs here, right? One cool thing about these legs is that you can have a kinetic output to keep these legs in relation to these body. So this is normally where the hip would be, right? But up here, you would create the radius where the pin would be. You would make a kinetic output to join these two together, right? So you'd have like this plus and negative effect where they stick the same, where they're attracted to each other, but then they stick to the same, what is the word I'm looking for? Yeah, it's been a long week. But they stick to the same length? No, it wouldn't be length. It would just stay in the same spot relative to our use. Now, one thing I really like about this circular design when they had first made him, it's coffee cup design, so to say, 2018, original design, right? Is that these shapes are all similar. So if you look at his head is technically a smaller version of his eye, right? Which makes it easy to start drawing these shapes. And then you look at the body, right? If you picture the body can also be this coffee cup and or half sausage shape, right? And that's one really cool thing that I enjoyed about his design. Now, in terms of personality, it's the same personality, same maniac. I feel like some episodes he's a lot more unhinged when he's not a robot, right? Because it's something about how his stances shows that he's more relaxed in his robot state, even though he doesn't really care so much about his movements, so to say, right? So one really cool thing that I also found is that, check this out. You know, this is round, so we don't have to do the squares or anything, right? What we can do though is we'll make a light line on the dynamic of the shape of this character. Now look at this. I'm going to go ahead and change the color so it's not confusing. You look at the motion of how he stands. It's kind of this relaxed state, but it's a curve, right? So if we drew a curve up to a stance, it kind of drops. Everything's just super lax, right? But then you also have this curve here, right? Where he's protruding himself. So the body also has its own curve, which works with the original curve of the full body. the range of motion pointing down with a little bit of a hinge, right? So that gives you more of a relaxed body lining up with the head, right? Now, go into hard shapes. You can see that we all have the same hard angles. These are just rounded, right? So it's got this cone shape. I'm going to practice on these little cones, right? Then at this bottom piece, it's almost like a cone into a circle because the majority of this is his forehead, right? So helps you create that shape. And this one also just repeats with the circle, right? And the fact that they threw a little neck on him just really, really adds to the comic element of his design. So fun to play with, right? So you just make us a character. You don't care what kind of character you make, just make it. End up with something like this, right? Now, the new design, it's got a little bit slight difference. It's a little less round. It's got a little bit more points on it. It's a little bit more sharp, right? 2000s, everything's like matrix, jaggedy, mysterious. Now, one thing I'm not too crazy with is I noticed that they tried to set the eyes farther apart, right? Here and here, where your pupil lines would be. But when he's close, it's like they come together. Because see how these pupil lines are now here and here? But if we were to come here where his face would be, right? The center line of the face. Center line of the face. His mouth is moved to the side, right? It's slightly moved to the side here. Give it some character, right? This asymmetry gives a really nice character to it. If his eyes were the same as these other pieces here, his eyes would theoretically come out this way. So these, let's say, in the shape of these eyes over here, let's go ahead and draw this in red. Theoretically, his eyes would be out this way, right? But that's not the case. What they did is they made his eyes more mobile. So what I'll do is I'll go back to black and I'll dot these so we can see the difference. Design. And this gives you more of like a direct look, right, onto his gaze. I could see why they did that because it's a little bit more mysterious, right? And then this version of GIR, they kind of stick to the same skull formula as everyone else. They just don't add the divot towards the back. When he's in his dog costume, there are some spots where they add this divot. See that? Some spots. So I thought it was just really cool that they incorporated more of the character's design. Now, if we look at his body straightforward, it's more of a box, right? Giving him more of a stubborn look. Everything's a lot more square. But he still has the round shoulders, right? So it gives the impression of more of a robotic look. Still has the circles on the arm. Still has the long, lanky hands. And he still has the double clampy legs. Now, what I noticed here is that the legs are more further apart, right? And they want to use these sharper shapes. I'm going to exaggerate it here just to kind of give you an example of what I mean by over exaggerating, right? So we have this character that's slightly round, but he still has some stubbornness to him in these legs, right? And the other ones would be closed in together. Now, the head, we can do the back of the head really sharp like we did these legs, so we can give a better idea of their design. Now, for his torso on this 3/4 view, I'm noticing it's more like a thumb, right? And they tilted the curve of his body a little bit more. That was the wrong way. Out, right? So go here. They pushed it out more. So when he drops his arms, it's more of a primitive look to the character, right? And he's got little hands here. And see, the legs are still apart, right? So we want to, when we draw him in our own version, if we have the legs at these little pivot points, the legs are closer together. Here, let me try to make it a little bit more radiant. They're closer together, but they're yawed out, right? Gives like a derpy look. But these ones are straightforward. So if we made it everything square, you see how his look changes, right? Now, antenna is still kind of the same. I think this is one of those things where they just kind of kept it. There's some that look a little thicker than others, but I don't think it matters to them much. Now, we're going to do with this bowl shape now. You see how this one's a little bit more round? I'm going to over-exaggerate these shapes that they use for creating these characters. Now, remember how we had Zim, and there's this weird, I don't want to say weird, but this little triangle at the bottom where their jawline would be. Now they brought that back here. See that? And he still got the same principles, because if we were to draw a human head like they did everywhere else, it still meets to where it should, right? It's just a little bit more narrowed out, right? Now I like that because it gives you more room to play with. With this cylindrical top hat kind of look, you know, if it was spinning around, it gives you the impression that there is more. I've brought this up a million times, I believe. It feels like I have. There's more stubbornness to this character, right? And really helps change the viewer's perspective now that you have a full series of him, right? So this is opposite of what the body is. You see that? We sharpened the body here. This one we did. Now for this one, we'll do the beanbags. So we're going to round these corners here. This one's already round. I don't have to do that. But we're going to make him so that we could start messing with the mass. And then we'll try to make something out of that mass, right? These little beanie bags, right? We have our circles. I'm going to try to disconnect everything best I can. That'll give us more to play with, so to say. Oh, now this is where the eye line is. I'm going to make sure we draw where the eye line is. And this is where the mouth line is. And they should meet about halfway to where our pretend ear would be. Eyes are up here. Now let's get a beanbag GIR going. Now, We already kind of had him dancing. Let's make him go insane. Let's give him some dynamic range, right? So I want him to be up in the air. I'm going to draw him in this perspective, right? So we have large, small, and then as we get higher, it's smaller, smaller. So therefore he's leaning back, right? So, and get our beanbag. Gonna mess with the range. It's gonna skew it a little more since everything's kind of pointed inwards, right? So his head's gonna kind of come up like that. We'll shrink this because his head, we want his head to be as if his mouth was opening, it would drop more. So let's go ahead and create that human head that they kind of replicate, right? His eye line is going to be up here and curve up, right? His face line is going to be right here. Now his jaw line, I like what they do. They drop it here. So this triangle that would be at the bottom here, boom, boom, gets extended. And then they add yet another triangle for the mouth. Now, what I like is, as I was watching this yesterday, I noticed that a lot of the times they bring the mouth up in a cylindrical fashion, right? And they close this here. And then the eyes stay in the same spot, but they kind of separate them a little bit more. Now these might be too big. Now I'm going to draw cheeks just to make it a little bit more pristine, so to say. Now what we have to do is we have to remember to draw in those little cones on the side of the eye. So this eye would be out here and here, right? Draw the thing. Boom, there's his little mouth. And now, since his body kind of curves in, so to say, it curves in, what we'll do is we'll draw our arm points, right? Remember, we're going to make them look crazy, so what we'll probably do is even it out, but we got to make the body slightly bigger. So we're just going to do our little square. I'm going to use light lines. We'll go ahead and round him here. It's got his little thing, right? And this bubble be a lot. It should be small because it's perspective, right? Remember, the legs are further apart, so I'm drawing them pretty far apart, right? And we want these to be pointed as they are. They're going to be smaller because I think they like to use a lot of these long curves. So for his fluid motion, we want them to be S-shaped. So we're going this way and we're going this way. Now, I'm going to bring this in just because it is a little too wide. It doesn't look right, correct? Let's go ahead and clean that up. Boom, boom. And we're going to go ahead let's put a hand here. Let's say he only has the two hands. Some dynamic range in there like that, right? And then we have ourselves a crazy GIR. Now, since it was perspective, one of these legs should probably be out a little bit more, right? So I'm going to delete this leg just to make it easier. I'm going to delete this leg. And I'm going to give him more range just so he looks more excited, right? And we're going to do, I'm going to change one of his thighs. So that we have one of his feet kind of stacking up in the air. And for this, I'm going to curve it down so it looks like he's running. Because you know GIR really loves to run. Kind of gives him that crazy look, right? And then as for this head, this needs to be wider. But we want it to be perspective, so we're going to over-exaggerate the amount of curve we gave him, right? And then we have a crazy GIR bot on the loose, running. Now, it looks funny just because it's in perspective, right? Theoretically, his mouth would be out a little further like this, and his head would come back in this way. And then his eyes would probably be more further apart. But, like I said, this is just a shortcut to kind of work with his shapes, get used to them, and then incorporate them into our own work, right? That looks a little bit more like him, right? Not completely happy with it, but we will definitely mess around with it. So now we got our other shapes. I have about 3 minutes to try to come up with a new GIR based off of my sketch. Now, I got pretty good at drawing these piggies, right? And I want to see if I can get a GIR just off the top of my head. Let's have him do some cool shit. Let's have his head slightly down. And what I want to do is just emphasize the mystery of his intense look. So since he's looking down, his eye line would be about here, right? And we want to exemplify these eyes so that people know that this GIR means business. Boom. You see that? It's already starting to look like him, right? And I'm not going to focus on getting these all right. It's going to be similar to how I had that Zim the other day, right? Oh, I hate that. That curve was way too far. You see that? Have our little thing. And then I'm not sure how they do a closed fist on him, but I'm pretty sure it's something like this. Right? Now we have his little TV. We're pretty much doing the opposite of what the other one was. Now his feet, I'm going to have them out this way like that. Right? Give them more dynamic range. Just like that. So what I did is I created a cone here, right, where that pivot point would be. And then another cone here, the feet would land. Now we have an intense robot looking GIR right here, right? Oh, snap, I didn't realize the time. Well, thank you for stopping by. We'll probably delve more into this robotic GIR. I did ramble a lot, but we got a lot done. See, we talked about range, fluidity, concepts in the art. But before I go, I'd like to invite you guys to check out my store on ludeconcepts.com. I have plenty of stickers and plenty of other projects that can help you guys out. You know, I have services, I got all kinds of things. So I'd go on ludeconcepts.com, check out some content, you know, and until next time, my fellow Ludists, thank you, and you are much appreciated. You have a good night.